You prayed, you let it go, and you still couldn't sleep. That's not a faith problem. That's a physiological one. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's happening inside your body and what to do about it tonight. Let's start with daytime. Not the dramatic moments, not a crisis at work, not a confrontation with a family member. We're talking about the low-grade, nearly invisible stress that most people over 50 no longer register as stress at all. A financial concern carried quietly, a health appointment that keeps getting pushed back, adult children you can't stop worrying about, an aging parent whose needs sit in the back of your mind every single day. None of these feel like emergencies. That's exactly what makes them so dangerous. They don't set off alarms. They just settle in. And your nervous system, the part of you responsible for threat detection, absorbs every single one. It does not distinguish between a predator in the wild and a medical bill on the kitchen counter. The response is quieter, but it is the same system. Here's where the investigation gets specific. That system has a name. It's called the sympathetic nervous system, and its entire job is to prepare your body for action. When it activates, your adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate climbs. Blood moves away from your digestive organs and toward your muscles. Your body is getting ready to run or fight. Now here's what most people don't realize. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, is not a switch. It's a slow tide. It rises gradually throughout a day of low-grade stress, and it does not drop quickly when the stress stops. Studies have found that cortisol levels in people under chronic stress can remain significantly elevated well into the evening, long after the stressor itself is gone, long after the prayer has been said. The body is still chemically bathed in alertness, and that has a direct effect on what happens next. When the nervous system perceives a threat, any threat, it triggers a cascade that begins with your breath. The chest tightens. The diaphragm, the large dome-shaped muscle beneath your lungs, begins to disengage. Instead of full deep breaths, the body shifts into shallow chest-level breathing, more frequent, more rapid. Here's the part most people never hear. After years of low-grade chronic stress, that shallow breathing pattern doesn't just appear in tense moments. It becomes your default, your resting state, the way you breathe walking to the mailbox, sitting at church, reading in your chair. You've adapted to it so completely, you don't feel it anymore, and then you lie down. When you move from upright to horizontal, the physics of your body change. The chest cavity compresses slightly. The diaphragm has to work harder, and if it's already been disengaged all day, lying down makes the problem significantly worse. Now here's the biochemical piece, and this is the part that tends to stop people cold. Shallow breathing doesn't just mean less oxygen, it means less carbon dioxide is being retained. And that matters more than most people know. Carbon dioxide is not simply a waste gas. It plays a critical role in regulating how much oxygen your blood actually delivers to your tissues. When CO2 levels drop, as they do with chronic shallow breathing, the body interprets this as a threat. It triggers what researchers call hypocapnic hypoxia. The brain senses the imbalance, and it responds. Stress hormones rise. The heart rate increases slightly. The nervous system shifts toward vigilance. In other words, your own breathing chemistry has become a second alarm system, running on its own, independent of anything you are thinking or feeling. And it gets more specific than that. The part of the brain that monitors this, the brainstem's respiratory control center, is in constant communication with your heart. Researchers measure this relationship through something called heart rate variability, or HRV. A healthy, regulated nervous system shows high variability. The heart speeds up and slows down rhythmically with each breath. That rhythm is a direct sign that the vagus nerve, the primary nerve of the rest and digest system, is doing its job. In people with chronic shallow breathing, that variability is suppressed. The rhythm flattens. And what researchers have found is striking. Low HRV at bedtime is one of the strongest predictors of sleep fragmentation and early waking in adults over 50. The body, put simply, has lost the signal that it is safe, and it will not rest until it receives it. Now here's what the research kept surfacing, and it surprised even the people who study this. For people who've built a genuine spiritual practice over decades, people who have actually done the inner work, the frustration is particular. Because the instruction to release what you cannot carry is not ambiguous. It is one of the most consistent invitations across all of Scripture. Cast it down, Let it go. Do not let your heart be troubled. And many of these people had genuinely surrendered, prayed, released, handed the burden over, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. What the research found is this: the body doesn't receive that memo. The nervous system isn't in the room with your spirit. It was shaped, trained over years and decades by accumulated stress responses, and it requires a completely different kind of signal. This is not a failure of faith. The capacity for spiritual surrender and the capacity for physical regulation are two separate systems. What we found is better described as a stewardship gap. The body was designed to follow the spirit's lead, but after years of chronic low-grade stress, it has to be shown how. And for people over 50 who've been carrying responsibilities for a long time, that gap has often been widening quietly for years. When you see the loop laid out clearly, it's hard to unsee. The cortisol that didn't clear, the diaphragm that stopped doing its job, the CO2 that dropped, the vagus nerve that went quiet, the HRV that flattened. None of it required a crisis. It required only time and a body that was never shown how to come back down. This is the hidden link, not a willpower problem, not a faith problem, a physiological loop. And here's what the research confirms. The loop can be interrupted. The nervous system is not locked. It is trainable. But the entry point is not the mind. It's not a thought, a decision, or even a prayer, though all of those matter enormously. The entry point is the breath. Before your nervous system can receive any other message, before rest can settle into the body the way it's already settled in the spirit, the physical alarm has to be addressed on its own terms. You have to signal the body that it is safe. Here's how that signal begins, and you can do this tonight. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4. Hold gently for a count of 2. Then exhale through your mouth for a count of 6. That extended exhale is the key. It directly activates the vagus nerve, stimulating the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system, the one responsible for rest and recovery. As that nerve activates, cortisol begins to clear. Heart rate variability begins to recover. The respiratory control center in your brainstem receives the signal it has been waiting for all day. One breath done this way begins to shift the system, not metaphorically, physiologically. This is step 1 of the night peace framework, and it is always the same, regardless of what you're carrying, regardless of how long the sleeplessness has gone on. Slow the body first, everything else follows. What kept you awake last night wasn't a mystery, it was a loop, and now you can see every piece of it. You can begin interrupting it tonight with what you just learned. That breath pattern is real, it is backed by research, and it works. But if you want something you can simply press play on, a guided audio that walks you through all 5 steps of the Night Peace Framework, built specifically for Christians in midlife. It's available to download right below this video. The body can follow where the spirit has already gone. You just have to show it the way.